Have you ever wondered what your brain's wiring actually looks like? I mean, really looks like. It sounds like a question straight out of science fiction, right? But believe it or not, it's a question scientists are now genuinely starting to answer.
So today, we're going to take a journey deep inside the human mind to map its hidden highways. We're going to break down an incredible technology called tractography, which lets us see the amazingly complex communication network that's running inside your head right now.
All right, so let's start with the big picture. When we talk about mapping the brain's highways, what are we really looking at?
At its core, tractography is a really advanced imaging technique. It basically hitches a ride on standard MRI technology to create these absolutely stunning visual maps of the brain's nerve fibers. And these nerve fibers, that's what we call the brain's white matter. You can think of it as the superhighway system that connects all the different parts of your brain and lets them talk to each other.
Okay, so why go through all this trouble? Is it just to make these beautiful pictures? No way! This is a total game changer for medicine. By mapping these pathways, doctors and scientists can get a way deeper understanding of neurological diseases. They can dig into the root causes of speech and learning disorders and even investigate the physical side of psychiatric conditions. It's a completely revolutionary way to see the brain's entire communication grid in action.
So you're probably wondering, how on earth does this work? Well, the secret, and this is pretty amazing, it lies in a clever trick that involves the secret life of water molecules inside your brain. This is the core principle that makes the whole thing possible.
It all comes down to a scientific phenomenon called diffusion. And really, that's just a word for the natural, random way that molecules tend to move around. Now, here's the brilliant part. Tractography technology is so smart that it doesn't even track the nerve fibers directly. Nope. Instead, it just tracks the movement of the water molecules that are constantly jiggling around inside our brain tissue.
Think about it like this. In some parts of your brain, water can move freely in any direction it wants, kind of like water sloshing around in a glass. That's called isotropic movement. But the real magic happens inside those long, thin nerve fibers. There, the water's movement is totally restricted. It's forced to flow in one specific direction, almost like water moving through a tiny straw. This directional flow is called anisotropic movement, and tracking that is the key that unlocks these incredible maps.
Okay, so we can track how water moves. That's pretty cool. But how do we get from that raw data to the incredible complex 3D maps we've been looking at? Well, let's see how that movement gets turned into a masterpiece.
The technology that does all the heavy lifting here is called diffusion tensor imaging, or DTI for short. For every tiny little point in the brain, what scientists call a voxel, DTI measures both the direction and the speed of that water diffusion. Then it creates a little mathematical package called a tensor that perfectly describes that movement. I love this analogy. It's like creating millions of tiny little compasses all spread out through the brain, with each one pointing the way the water is flowing.
The whole process is basically a four-step journey. It all starts with the MRI machine grabbing all of that raw data. Then some really powerful software gets to work, calculating that compass, the diffusion tensor, for every single one of those tiny spots. Next, it generates a couple of crucial analytical maps. And then comes the final step. It uses all of that information to reconstruct the stunning 3D fiber tracks themselves.
Let's decode those analytical maps real quick. The two most important are called FA and MD. FA, which stands for fractional anisotropy, is basically a score of how directional the water flow is. A high FA score means the water is flowing really strongly in one direction, which tells us the nerve fibers are healthy and well organized. Then there's MD, or mean diffusivity. This just measures the overall amount of water movement. Any changes in MD can be a sign of subtle structural changes in the brain tissue, maybe from an injury or a disease.
And of course, you see all the colors. They aren't just for decoration. They're actually a code. They tell us the main direction the fibers are running. Typically, red shows fibers going from side to side, green is for front to back, and blue is for up and down. It's a simple visual trick that makes this incredibly complex structure so much easier to understand at a glance.
So, we have these fantastic maps, but how are they actually being used? This is where the science hits the real world, and where tractography is starting to fundamentally change how we practice medicine.
The applications in the clinic are just astounding. For neurosurgeons, this is like getting a GPS map of the brain before they even start an operation. They use these maps to plan how to remove brain tumors while avoiding damage to those critical communication pathways. It's also become a vital tool for studying degenerative diseases like multiple sclerosis, because you can literally see the damage to the white matter. And the research? Wow. We're talking everything from analyzing psychiatric disorders to actually watching how a newborn's brain wires itself up.
And this quote really just hits the nail on the head. It's all about understanding the integrity of that white matter. How healthy and connected are those highways? Because that is absolutely fundamental to better understanding a massive range of conditions, from diseases and tumors all the way to traumatic brain injuries.
Now, of course, as amazing as this all is, it's still a cutting-edge technology. And that means it's not perfect, at least not yet. So let's take a quick, honest look at the road ahead for brain mapping.
Researchers are still tackling some pretty big hurdles. One of the toughest is the crossing fibers problem. In a lot of places in the brain, these pathways don't just run neatly side by side. They cross and overlap like a huge highway interchange, and that can really confuse the algorithms. It's also still tricky to map areas where the water diffusion is naturally less directional. And like with any new medical tech, there's a constant push to standardize everything so that results from one hospital can be accurately compared to another.
But here's the really exciting part. Despite those challenges, this field is advancing at an incredible pace. Seriously, every single year, brilliant scientists are developing new solutions and smarter algorithms that are constantly improving the accuracy and the detail of these brain maps. And all of that leaves us with one final, fascinating question to think about. As these incredible maps of our internal highways become more and more detailed, more and more accurate, what new secrets of the brain, of thought, and maybe, just maybe, of consciousness itself are they finally going to reveal?